Just like Dead or Alive 5 was my gateway into fighting games as a whole, The King of Fighters and Garou Mark of the Wolves were my gateway into 2D fighting games. I've already covered how I'm excited for Garou 2 previously on this channel. A card for that should be popping up about now, if you'd like to watch that first. However, we're here to review what was, for 23 years, the final Fatal Fury game. I have to thank my friend John McBaugh for getting me into these games in the first place because 2D fighters were never on my radar before these games. As some of you may know, SNK were pumping out fighting games left, right, and center in the 90s through the early 2000s. While they never had the same success as their rivals in Capcom, SNK did carve out a niche for themselves and release some of the most beloved fighting games of all time, and for that they must be commended. Especially because SNK were starting to struggle financially around the time of Garou's release. And that's part of why we've had a 23-year wait between games. A wait that will be even longer by the time Garou 2 even releases. It'll be interesting to see SNK wrap up the storyline of Fatal Fury with the upcoming game. Considering the last game ended on a cliffhanger, hopefully this one won't set up yet another 2-decade-long cliffhanger. If you're comparing Garou to a modern game, it's going to seem very light on the modes. You have normal mode, which includes the story, survival, and versus. Practice mode, where you pick one of 14 characters to learn their moves, and then the aforementioned online. So overall, there's not a lot to choose from here, but it looks nice, and the blues and jazz-based soundtrack blares in the background, adding a nice ambiance to the game. Beyond that, you have an options menu where you can tweak a few small visuals, a gallery mode where you can view concept art you've unlocked, ranking, where you can look at where your rank in the world is, plus look at your general statistics. Being able to look at your stats is a nice feature in fighting games, in general. So, how does the game feel? You'd think the game being over 2 decades old, it'd feel janky, when honestly, it doesn't. In fact, I'd say Garou is the smoothest fighting game I've ever played. The smoothness of gameplay is part of why I love this game so much. It doesn't feel like I'm struggling to make my inputs, which is a complaint I have with a lot of 2D fighting games, which is part of why I've struggled to get into this genre so much. The game also feels fast-paced, which is something that also put me off this type of fighting game for the longest time. When it comes to fighters, I like fast characters, fast gameplay, high damage output. However, I can't get into 2D tag fighters because they just feel a little too chaotic. In the 3D realm of fighters, I like Dead or Alive and Soul Calibur best. Those games are about the same level of pace as Garou, so that's part of why I love them so much. Most 2D fighters I find are just a little bit too slow. But how does the game feel online? Code Mystics were brought in to build the online for Garou, so how did they do? Garou loses some points in the online portion, but not because of poor netcode. It's the lack of proper functioning lobbies that makes this game feel a little bit lesser. You basically get ranked and create match. The create match allows you to play online against one other player. However, since this game is from 1999 originally, you can't expect them to have included super robust online modes. It's bare bones, and it functions. However, the online claws back a ton of points because of how good the netcode is. It utilizes a piece of technology called Rollback Netcode. I don't fully understand the technical workings of this type of netcode, however, I will link to an article explaining rollback and how it works in the description below. Needless to say, Code Mystics did a great job with the stability of the rollback, and being able to customize how much input delay is baked into the lobby is a great feature, as it allows you to really dial in the game experience based off how far away the person you're fighting is. So why am I complaining about the localization? Well, it comes down to the fact the localization for the story mode is kinda jank. Sometimes just be words that are grammatically wrong to the point of making the sentence seem like it was put through a 90s version of Google Translate.
Versus Freeman.
It's not like it's too bad of an issue though, it's just a quirk of Japanese arcade games of this era. Most of them had jank translations. Even home console RPGs still suffered from weird translations, so it's not a unique case to just Garou. My other complaint with the story mode is how fast the text scrolls by during cutscenes. I'm a fast reader, but even I still miss things when game presents themselves in this manner. Also, this isn't just a Garou issue, it's an SNK one. During the Nest saga of KOF, there were even a few scenes that went by just a bit too quickly for the player to register the information given. Thank God we can manually advance text in modern games. So, I've been waxing poetic about this game for a while now. What are the negatives? Honestly, there aren't that many. My main complaint comes down to how the AI is, and the small complaint about the localization. So why am I complaining about the AI? Well, this game suffers from I'm going to eat your quarters syndrome. Think back to when this game was made. It was just before the death of the arcade. During this time period, games were designed to munch your quarters and be punishingly hard, not because of bad game design, because the AI was just designed to read your inputs. Even the standard AI is able to do this. But in SNK games, the bosses are especially bad for this. Seriously, just look up SNK boss syndrome. Thank God you're allowed to tone down the AI's difficulty in the options menu. Mechanically speaking, Garou isn't an overly complex game. In fact, its simplicity is part of the appeal. You have your standard light punch, light kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick buttons. You also don't have any pretzel input, something SNK was known for at the time. Even the more complex characters like T-Zoc are relatively simple to use. The most complicated aspect of Garou is mostly down to learning your character's inputs, a challenge inherent in any fighting game, and the use of the top system. Another mechanic that's specific to Garou is the Just Defend system. This is where Garou really shows some more of its depth. Despite being a less complex fighting game, a Just Defend moment happens when you block an incoming attack within 7 frames. Also, any attack can be just defended against, with Just Defend including aerial attacks, which is noteworthy because Garou lacks aerial blocking. Just Defend is much more than a simple block though, as it does include some advantages. This includes a small boost to your health, plus a small boost to your power meter. Guard durability does not decrease either. 2-frame faster recovery from block stun is also included, and multiple blocks can be attempted at the same time. What does the top system stand for? It stands for Tactical Offensive Position System. The top system is simple in its execution, but complex in how it's used. At the start of each match, you choose your top position, which will influence when you enter top mode. When in top mode, your health will slowly regenerate, you'll do extra damage to your opponent, and if your opponent is defending, their guard meter will drain much faster. Some people will like to set their top meter for the beginning of the match, others will prefer it at the half health point, and others will prefer it right at the end. Personally, I use it at the end because it feels more like a comeback mechanic, something I personally enjoy in fighting games, but a lot of people don't. But that's a topic for another video. So what are the primary positives of Garou Mark of the Wolves? It's a fun pick-up-and-play game that even relative newbies to fighting games will be able to grasp somewhat quickly, giving it a low barrier of entry. But being a tough-to-master game where good players will have some truly competitive matches. That's something all fighting games should strive for. Other positives include the soundtrack. For whatever reason, SNK is just one of those dev teams that no matter what game they release, the soundtrack just works. B. Jenny's theme, called Bad Girl, is one of the standout tracks to me. It has a swinging, jazzy feel that matches Jenny's energy, though I'll admit a pop-punk song would probably fit the character in the modern age better. Still, a great song to listen to when writing scripts. In fact, you're listening to a portion of the song right now. Another big positive is the roster for this game. Despite being incredibly minuscule for this day and age, all 14 characters feel unique and fun to play, while also offering a variety of archetypes to the player. You have your Shotos like Rock Howard, Terry Bogard, B. Jenny, and Kushnude Butt. Then you have characters with more unique movesets like Hotaru, Kuto Maru, whose name I'm probably butchering, plus the big baddies of the game in Kane and Grant. Then you have your grapplers like Kevin and T-Zoc. Fun fact for you guys, Kevin is actually related to Blue Mary, who's Terry Bogard's significant other. It's cool how SNK includes little tie-ins like that only lore nuts like me will really dig. The final aspect I'm going to touch on for the positives is this game's presentation. Despite using technology that was way out of date by 1999 standards, Garou is a game that presents itself very well. The muted color palettes really make Southtown feel gritty and grimy, which is nice to see. Plus the character sprites are all detailed and well animated. That's one thing I really miss from this era of gaming, the amount of love put into pixel art and the like. You still get this on the indie scene, but it's an art form that has died off in the modern AAA gaming space. So why should you care about a 23-year-old game that was a bit outdated tech-wise even for its era? Ultimately, it comes down to the fact Garou is more than the sum of its parts, and because of its technical limitations, it feels special. It's highly polished, it's fun to play, it's accessible, and if you merely want to just pick up a few rounds and play them, you can do so. In fact, this game's simplicity is why I love it so much. If you're just starting out in the realm of 2D fighting games, Garou is an excellent starting point, and one I'd highly recommend. For 20 bucks Canadian, it's hard to go wrong. Also, at the time of recording, it's on sale for a mere $4.99, making it nice and cheap for a pickup. My final rating for Garou Mark of the Wolves is a 9.4 out of 10. A few small quirks prevent it from being a perfect game. I hope you've enjoyed my review of Garou Mark of the Wolves. It's easily one of my favorite fighting games of all time. If you'd like to catch me being a sweaty scrub in Garou and some other fighting games, then you can catch me on twitch.tv/Leafer90. Link is in the description below, as is a link to all of my social media accounts, and my Discord server as well. Also, thank you yet again, Godo808, for editing this video. If you need to hire an editor, Godo is great. Link for his socials are below, as is a link for his email regarding his editing services.